Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that this episode includes discussion of suicide. If this topic is difficult for you, please listen with care or simply skip this episode. If you or anyone you know needs support at any time, please contact Lifeline on 131114 or Beyond Blue on 1300 22 46 36. Welcome to The Learning Landscape, a podcast designed to encourage and equip school educators. Our aim is simple: to bring both hope and help to those working every day with young people. My name is Simon Matthews, and The Learning Landscape is proudly brought to you by Independent Schools Tasmania. It's a real pleasure to be joined today by Tasmania's Minister for Education, the Honourable Joe Palmer. So, Minister, Happy New Year and welcome back to our podcast.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be back with you. I can't believe it's been a year since we did this.
When we last spoke, we spent some time talking about student wellbeing in fairly broad terms, but since then, the introduction of the social media delay has become a pretty significant policy development for Tasmania and Australia. So to begin, what problem were you thinking that this specific reform might address?
Look, I think, we have seen growing evidence that shows the toll that social media is having on the wellbeing of our young people. To be honest with you, Simon, I think there's evidence that shows the toll that social media is taking on adults as well. You know, we see cyberbullying, we see increased levels of anxiety, huge issues around body image worries, sleep problems. All of these issues are actually, on the rise. So, this decision to have a delay in access to social media for under 16s, it's really aimed at protecting young people, isn't it, from some of those risks that we see, that exposure to content that, that they shouldn't be having that, coming into their bedrooms, right in front of their faces on a device. I think we can. The evidence is there. We've seen the harm that social media and some of these platforms are doing in our society, and in particular with our young people. So I think the federal government were really courageous, and as a state government, we're doing everything we can to ensure that we are keeping our young people safe.
So obviously you're identifying there some of the concerns, some of the disruptors to our young people's lives. What are you hoping will be some of the benefits, some of the upsides for young people's learning and development if this delay is successful?
Look, I think there was really wide consultation by the federal government around implementation of this policy. And, in that process, there were thousands of discussions with students, with young people, with teachers, with educators, with families. And I think that, it was the same conversation regardless of what state and territory you might be living in. And so I think that, we have that expert advice. We know that by putting a delay in place, we can be not exposing our children to things until they have the maturity to be able to handle it. I think that's what I'm really hoping comes out of it. And I mean, I'm a mother of 4. My youngest is 15. He was horrified at this, whole concept. He's only got a few months to go till he is 16. But my eldest son is 28, didn't have any exposure to social media growing up. My youngest is 15. It's been part of how he has communicated for a long time. And so, there is a change. There's a change for those older teenagers who do have to adjust. But I think for the younger cohort of people coming through who as yet have had no exposure, they can have that extra time to develop the skills that they need and the maturity that they need and the connections with friends and family that they need, that can help them work out, this is not good content, that's not a safe space for me, and they can just enjoy being kids and enjoy just talking to each other.
I love the fact that you've brought the fact that you're a mum into this conversation. You're not just a Minister for Education, you're also a mother. How might you have those conversations with other parents? And I think you and I would both agree that some parents feel really conflicted in this. But what are the sorts of conversations you would be having with them, and what encouragement you're giving to them to actually really show courage and leadership in this?
Yeah, and I get it is really conflicting. You know, first and foremost, as a parent, I was really worried about my youngest son and is he going to be isolated? How is he going to connect? He didn't grow up with a phone where you dial the number and you hide in the cupboard and your parents give you 10 minutes on a Sunday where you could just talk flat out to your best friend. Like, you know, so this is how he communicates. So I was really concerned with, if we are removing something, what are we putting in place? And, you know, there are other platforms that younger children can use that are much safer. And, you know, the onus is on these big social media platforms to make sure that where children are engaging, it is a really safe space. So I understand the apprehension that parents might, you know, have felt. But at the end of the day, this is about protecting our children. I mean, you don't open the front door and let bullies just come on in and line up in your lounge room. And that's literally what we've seen occurring. And I think whilst there are concerns around what we're taking away from children and how will they communicate when this is all they may have known, you know, the impacts of when this goes wrong are claiming children's lives. You know, that's the reality of the situation. You know, we have 12-year-olds who have taken their life. They should still be climbing trees, Simon. So we have to work through what some of those tricky consequences are of this social media delay. But at the end of the day, you know, we should not be a society where it is acceptable for 10, 11 and 12-year-olds to be contemplating that they can no longer see themselves in this world. That's not acceptable.
And that in itself is just an incredibly sobering thought. Yeah. The fact is that you are more than just a mum. You're also the Minister for Education in Tasmania. So what are some of the things that you're hoping to see, some of the green shoots you're looking for in the area of education and learning and schools? What are those things that you're hoping to see because of this introduction and this delay?
Look, I'm probably answering this question from a personal perspective of what I hope we'll see. I hope we'll see kids, you know, less addicted to that flick, instant gratification. That this will give them time to stop and think about things and communicate differently. You know, I think, you know, what we see on a lot of these social media platforms, and I'm not just talking about kids, I'm talking about adults as well, is that without even thinking, people are just typing things, saying things that can be really hurtful and really damaging. And I think when you remove that tool from younger ones, it kind of stops that flow and they have more time to think about, well, do I really want to say that? Am I comfortable saying that to someone's face? Gee, it was easy to sit in my bedroom and have a crack at someone when no one can see me, but would I actually say that to someone? So I think there's that element to it. I also think about how tired kids are. I often think about children's imaginations. Every moment of every day is filled with something when you have a device. You don't, hang out in your bedroom and daydream about what could be, because you can just flick and be entertained and have information coming at you. So sometimes I worry about the beauty of imagination for our young people, because some of the great thinkers of our time, some of the best ideas have come from, that quiet contemplation and that space of using your imagination. So I hope that we will see creativity creeping back, kids learning how to play with a box, or just be out in the street playing with dogs, their animals, and things like that. I think there's so much of kids' childhoods that has disappeared and been replaced by a screen.
I know it's incredibly basic and not a lot of people are talking about it, but just the fact that you're talking about this delay creating time and space, I think is a really beautiful thing. And I think we'd agree that young people can do with more of both, so it's wonderful. Minister, in previous conversations I've heard you talk... I think every one of us could, that's right. In earlier conversations, I've heard you talk about the fact that schools can't and shouldn't be expected to solve everything on their own. This is a really good example, isn't it, of a policy which has got to be bigger than just school or government. We've actually got to be thinking about society, and certainly the wording of the legislation from the federal government is around putting the onus back on industry, technology and industry. How are you seeing this as a great opportunity to actually be a whole village that raises children?
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, Simon. And, I have talked endlessly about the fact that schools now seem to be responsible for everything to do with all of society's problems. And I think that's where the federal government has been very clever with this policy by saying, no, you are the multi-billion-dollar industry. This is your responsibility. You have a responsibility to our children. And so we are going to hold you accountable. You have to put in place all the methods, all the platforms that keep under 16s off certain platforms. We're going to hold you to account for breaches. You will be penalised for that. And, I think social licence is really important here for these big companies. I would like to think that they want to be seen as good corporate citizens. And, this is a way that they can do it. So, this isn't for schools to monitor. This isn't for teachers to be having to say, oh my goodness, you shouldn't be on that platform. The responsibility firmly sits with those social media platforms. And I think that's really, really important. And, I think it's setting up the way of the future. If there are issues, then let's go back to the cause of the issue, rather than saying, well, schools, you've got to try and fix it, or families, you've got to try and fix it.
I love it. It's a refreshing change. And as you say, I think it was well-written legislation that really put the onus where it needs to be. Yeah. Minister, let's get you to use your imagination as we finish. When you look ahead 5 or say 10 years, what do you hope that young Tasmanians will say that this generation of leaders got right when it came to social media and ensuring every child could have a childhood?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I hope that in time they will look back and they will say, we gave them a break and we protected their childhood. And I know right now some of our young people don't feel that way, but I really hope in time they'll look back and say, thank goodness that generation protected my childhood.
That's a great hope, and I think every Tasmanian joins you in that hope. So thank you. And Minister, thank you for your time today, but also thank you for your passion for ensuring best outcomes for all Tasmanian children, and we really appreciate that. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on this episode of The Learning Landscape. Thank you for taking time to learn alongside us today. If you found this episode helpful, please consider rating and reviewing our podcast and sharing it with your network. Your support helps others discover these conversations and keep them going. I look forward to catching up with you next time.